Hey, Justin, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey man, no, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, excited about to hear a little bit more about your story and your journey. I always find it very fascinating for people that have a W-2 job and kind of what's going on, and uniquely yours in the timing of everything that you've went through. But you've done really well in the multifamily space, and I would just love for you to kind of share your story, and before that, just let everybody know who you are and what's going on.
Yeah, no, I'm Justin Dixon. I live here in Austin, Texas. Been in Austin for about a little over 2 years, but grew up in a rural part of Pennsylvania, about an hour above Harrisburg, which is right in the middle of the state. And, I grew up in a very kind of middle class family. My investing advice and kind of business advice was get a good job, work there for 30 years, invest in your 401k, and hope you have enough to retire at the end of that. So that's kind of where I started. Right out of college, I got a job in the recruiting world. That's been my life over the last 16 years, has been in recruiting in one form or facet. And I started a recruiting business a few years ago, which we'll talk about. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey. And I moved to Philadelphia shortly after college and did recruiting, and then quickly realized okay, I need to figure out this whole real estate space. And it's been an interesting ride. I started out with reading Rich Dad Poor Dad in mid 2018. That was kind of the light bulb moment that really showed me and told me that I need to think about what I'm doing with my time and my money and everything a little bit differently than just kind of working a W-2 job. So,
by the way, that's fascinating for me, just because you really don't think about how important that book has been. But even for me, I read that book in 2003 or 4, right?
Yeah.
And so here you are reading it in 2018, and it still has the effect today as it did even back when I started. So truly powerful.
It was literally a light bulb moment. I really had no exposure to real estate investing other than my wife and I bought a condo a few years prior. And then I stumbled upon that book, and I was listening to it on my walks to work in the morning. And, literally one day I got home and I was a little nervous because I was like, my mindset had already shifted, right? I was like, okay, I need to figure out how I can stop kind of investing in the 401ks of the world and think about real estate. And we weren't independently wealthy. We both were W-2 workers. But I was nervous because I was hoping my wife would see have the light bulb moment as well. And luckily she did very quickly. I remember getting home from work one day and being like, what the heck are we doing? What are we doing with our time and our money and all that fun stuff?
Because it forces you to radically change you're thinking it. That book, when you read it, it speaks. If you have any wires that are not all the way connected to your job, right? If you're disconnected, it's going to reconnect, and you start getting a different power supply, and you really start thinking, whoa, wait a second, everything that I'm doing, I'm not sure that it's right now.
Yeah.
And it just introduces the concept.
The grain too. It's against the norm. So, that's one thing we realized very quickly when we started talking together about real estate, and we were consuming, a lot of podcasts and books and things on real estate. Bigger Pockets was like my saved search and my Google Chrome and all that stuff. So it was just constantly listening and reading stuff. I wanted to talk about it a lot to my friends, but my friends were, they were what I was literally, a week, month, a year prior, and
they were not woke yet. They didn't.
Yeah,
they weren't awake. They were still sleeping. Zombie mode.
We were like, we need to find some additional friends that we could speak about real estate with. And luckily we found some people that we knew that had done some stuff. And, our first real estate investment was a duplex. I didn't want to go down the whole single family route. I felt that it was very much more risky. I'm a risk averse person by nature. And I didn't like having one unit, one tenant. And then if they left, I'd have to pay the mortgage. So but I also didn't have the mindset to go bigger into, 30, 40, 50, 100 units. So I was like, let me go 2 to 4. We bought a duplex. I ended up buying it in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, even though we were living in Philadelphia at the time. I just stumbled upon an article of the best real estate markets to invest in. And, Texas, Florida, Georgia were all on that list, but then Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania was for some reason. And my mom grew up in Pittsburgh. I spent a lot of time there when I was a kid. So I was like, I know Pittsburgh, and it's, still in state. So I called a real estate agent, and I literally said, hey, I'm a new investor. I've never done this before. I live in Philadelphia. I've got a little bit of money, and I need a real estate investing friendly realtor. And he's like, cool, I'm pulling up to my one of my flips right now. Happy to help. So over the course of like 2 or 3 months, he would go in and videotape himself walking through these houses. And then we bought one sight unseen. First time I saw it was during the inspection a few months later, and we still have that property. It's been doing really well for us so far. But we realized really quickly after spending about 6 months chasing the shiny object, everybody on Bigger Pockets is successful in one form or facet of real estate, whether it's fix and flip, single family, BRRRR method, house hacking, et cetera, et cetera. So we literally were like, we listened to a podcast and we're like, let's go try calling and sending mailers to mobile home park, people. And then, let's try this. And so we spent about 6 months kind of testing what we didn't like to do. But I kept coming back to the syndication thing. I kept coming back to like the cool factor of owning or being an owner of, 100, 200, 300 unit apartment complex. So, but then I realized kind of in kind of late 2019 that it takes a team and a village to take down one of these big assets, right?
Yeah,
it's not
sure does.
you or me or one person just kind of doing it. You need whether you need people on your team or you've got to partner with other people, vendors, accountants, lawyers, etc. And that's when I realized I need to find a like tribe of people, a cohesive group, a coach, a mentor to really engross me in this. Because I started underwriting these deals, and I was like, what the heck do I do with it if I find one?
Right. Like, what's the next step, right?
Yeah, if the numbers work, I don't have the cash to go, take down a $10 million property or whatever the case is.
Pony up to $100,000, $200,000 in earnest money. Let's go, right?
That's right. So so we started doing the multifamily thing and started getting into it, but the whole goal of my W-2 life and kind of after we read Rich Dad Poor Dad was I always had this entrepreneurial bug. I had started a business on the side a few years earlier to do some side consulting. And then the goal was in 2020 to quit my W-2 and go full bore into recruiting, have that business kind of fund, our real estate investing and really have the time to invest in real estate. And so throughout 2019, we downgraded our lifestyle. We owned a condo and lived in a condo downtown. We ended up moving to the suburbs. We moved into a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. Not the nicest thing in the world, but our goal was to shrink our expenses as much as we possibly could.
Yeah.
So that all of our expenses, all of our life was funded by my wife's job. And we did that. Mm-hmm. And we also had, the necessary 6 to 8 months of, nest egg in an emergency fund if shit really hit the fan. We had that flexibility.
That's a big deal though, but like, cause you knew what you wanted to do. You're like, but let's get lean and mean. And so we can have the one income so I can be the risk. I can be out there going and be the hunter gatherer for the big idea project, right? Yep. Like legacy stuff.
Yeah. And, credit to my wife for trusting me to, do that and, believing in me and us having the, kind of in lockstep mentality for this whole thing to be successful. And so that's what we did. 2019, at the end of it, we kind of were like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I my ducks in a row and, coming after the new year, January, kind of, I think it was 10th or something, walked into my boss's office and quit. And then half a month later, COVID hit, right? And so unbeknownst to me, COVID was going to completely destroy the recruiting business that I had, started and was doing well at for the first month or so. I ended up making about half that year what I made the previous year as a W-2 employee, which, was a big gut punch. And that was a very, or it could have been a much more difficult time in our lives, because luckily my wife kept her job. So, we had income coming in, but, my dream of being this entrepreneur and having a business and doing all this fun stuff was, shot in the dark with.
Starts to get put on the side just a little bit, right? You're like, wait a second, hold on.
Yeah. Well, and my whole worst case scenario was, okay, maybe I don't like being an entrepreneur. Maybe I'm not as good as I think I'm going to be. it's not as fun as I want it to be. So I'll just go back and get another W-2 recruiting job. Like that's easy. Well, no, it isn't, because there's nobody's hiring in 2020, and
There
there's
was
no
no
recruiting
jobs
job.
out there. Yeah, no
Yeah,
one. Everybody was like, let's just keep what we got and try to survive.
that's exactly right. So, luckily, like I said, my wife and I were in lockstep on the whole thing. We knew this was a long-term play. And, flash forward to today, one of the good things about 2020 and not having a very busy recruiting business is I spent all of that year learning the multifamily space. I think I underwrote myself 200 deals, submitted a bunch of offers, didn't get anything, but it taught me the underwriting skill, and I was able to build that muscle over that year, so that now when I'm sent a deal from one of the people that I'm in the group with, we all use the same analyzing tool, the same Excel doc. And so I can quickly analyze or look at their tool, their analyzer, and say, I think you're a little too aggressive, or I think you pulled this lever to be aggressive, or that. And so I can quickly, underwrite their deal to say, yeah, I think you're too aggressive. I'm not, not interested in partnering with you on this deal. Or I can quickly say, yes, I am, because I think there's cushion or something like that. So, that was kind of a silver lining of that whole year, is that I was able to really build that analyzing muscle. And I'm not a Excel guru or a financial guru myself, but if you do something,
But you got to do the work. So
it.
that's the thing. Most people are not willing to learn that. Like once you actually become a master of that underwriting process, then you can teach it and offline it to a VA to get it 90% there
Yeah.
on new deals, right? So,
Yeah.
but by you doing the work in the beginning, that's where you really understand the crevices of the software, of like what levers do what, because we have our own software. We do it with our tribe. We all kind of underwrite from the same software.
Yeah.
Right? And it makes it so much easier to deal partner amongst each other when you're in a group think tank, because everybody's kind of playing from the same playbook.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very easy for us to say, here's even though, I was looking at a deal the other day and outside Atlanta, and it's like, I don't really know the Atlanta market that well, but I think your rent increases are a little aggressive, and, you've already kind of pulled this lever so that, everything has to go right for that to actually happen. Right. And, I think we've all seen in the last, if you bought a deal 2 years ago, you never anticipated, what's happening now with interest rates and all that fun stuff. So there's a lot of people that are holding on to deals right now, or sitting on deals right now, that they're, maybe underwater in, or they're, having that oh crap moment, which is unfortunate. So, so that's a little bit about my journey and kind of where we've been. I think we're wrapping up our fifth deal that we've been a GP in. We're actually working on a deal in Scottsdale, and it's out near where you are. So, we've done as well as we wanted to be at this point, and things are looking bright. So I'm glad I made that jump and all that.
Yeah, let's talk about the anatomy of kind of your first bigger deal, right? Because I
Yeah.
always think that's always the whole. I left my job. People that have a hard time getting over that, but then let's just talk about your very first bigger deal. Did you find it, or was it brought to your group, or how did that come to you?
Yeah, all the deals that I'm a GP in, I've been a co-GP where somebody else found it. I've just been in the kind of capital raising, investor relations piece of it. So I have not been on the I found it and brought it to a group side. But the first one was
But that's a very interesting point, though. So for everybody that's listening right now, that is probably the easiest way to get into a GP spot, is to provide value, raise some capital, be a part of the team, and get some GP, right?
Yeah.
Because really that has a lot of effect when you're actually getting ready to, when you do find your own deal, and you do, they're going to ask, well, what experience do you have?
Yep.
Operating experience. And at that point, it does not matter if you own 1% or 50% or 100%. You have GP experience, which is
Right.
I'm an operator.
Yeah.
That checks the box for the lender.
That's right. And that was one of the things. And I'm privileged and excited that, some guy gave me a shot, because I didn't anticipate being a capital raiser or raising capital for deals. I didn't think that was going to be part of my journey. I thought my skill set was going to be the fact that I had time, and I was very interested in the hunt of finding a deal. I found that to be much more time consuming. much more difficult than I had anticipated. And so I had been talking to some of my friends and people that I knew about what I was doing in investing in real estate. And we had invested in a couple of deals as an LP because I wanted to understand what it felt like from an LP's perspective,
Yep.
what documentation you had to sign, all that fun stuff. And actually, just a few weeks ago, we had our first deal go full cycle that we invested in 2020. So I was able to see kind of what that looks like. Because the other thing is, I never realized you could take an old 401k from an old job, put it into a self-directed IRA, and invest that way, right?
Yeah, it's lazy money that you weren't going to use anyways or can't even use. So it's like, let's put it to work, right?
Yeah. So there's so many things that you learn as you start to, pull back the onion on this whole like rich dad, poor dad thing. It's so fascinating. But go back to your point. The first deal that we did that we were the co-GPs on was a 2-property portfolio in outside of Kansas City, Kansas. It was one of the guys in the group found it. The story on that deal was they had the same co-GP had found and bought a deal the year prior, about 3 miles away, was crushing it, way over their pro forma rents, all that fun stuff. So we bought a deal that was a little bit nicer and didn't need as much work. So we thought slam dunk, it was going to be an easy sell. And that was a story that we pitched to our investors. And I had a couple of people that were interested in getting into the real estate space. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but as I was thinking through my kind of short-listed Rolodex of people that I knew that I thought, hey, they would probably be interested in real estate or investing with me. The people that I thought were like, yep, they're in, because I knew they made a lot of money and I knew they were smart and savvy and financially savvy. They weren't the people that invested. Definitely not in my first one. It was my golf buddy that I was, I kind of knew what he did. I kind of knew kind of what he made. And I'm like, he's like, oh yeah, I'm really interested in real estate investing. My cousin did a syndication a few years ago on a 6-unit deal. And I was like, interesting. So he was one of my first investors and definitely would not have pegged him as being the first person to invest in a deal with me. But
now, but I got to ask you this question though. How did it feel to get that first piece of private money?
It was great. It was like great and nerve-wracking all at the same time, right? Because every deal that I've raised on, except for one, I've invested alongside my investors. And I want to show them that I believe in the deal enough that I'm putting my own capital at risk. But really, that's not the metric or the barometer that they should be, looking at. I am more nervous about losing or not being a steward of their money than I am about my own.
Right. Is make sure your other co-GPs are going to help massage and make the deal work and make it a viable, real deal that performs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So getting that first private money, and I would have rather come from somebody that I knew had either made a lot more money or whatever, because that would have made it a whole lot easier. But yeah, it was very exciting and also nerve-wracking to say, no, dude, don't worry, just wire that $75,000 to this bank account. That's like
yeah.
And he's like, cool, I did it. I'm in. And I was like, awesome. So knock on wood, that deal's been doing pretty well. It hasn't been as rosy as we thought.
They never are, right?
Yeah.
The ones you always think they're going to be really good. It's the sleepers that come out. You're like, whoa, where did that one come from? But
yeah.
But over time, they all do, though. That was my other point. You put enough time in between the day you bought it and when you actually sell it, things usually go pretty well. Things will usually go pretty well.
Yeah. So I do like the syndication game. It is more of a long-term flip in my mind. That's how I kind of sell it to people, because it's, you're not holding these things for 30 years. You're holding it for 3 to 6, maybe 3 to 5, something like that. So one thing that I'm also working on with a couple of partners that I've met through this whole process is finding deals that we can buy outright, and that where it's more of a joint venture versus, and that's more of a long-term cash flow play versus I need to make, double my money in 5 years. So
here's my thought process on that. This is what I believe, right? So like we've got a lot of syndications, but we also are starting to heavily invest in a lot of our deals where we're the big investor of it, right? So as these projects mature, and some of our project sizes have really went from, when we first started, we're doing $8 million deals. Now we're doing like $40 million deals.
Yeah.
And so when one of those matures and you make, $15 million of profit that I'm going to make, you're like, wait a second, now with that $15 million, I'm just going to go buy my own deal.
Right.
right? And it's just going to be me, and I'm going to be the
Yeah.
investor, and that's my legacy money, right?
Yeah.
Or I've also done it this way where I've taken that kind of money and I still put, like, if I had a $10 million raise, I might take $5 million and put it in where I'm the GPs. But the ultimate goal is to not really have very many other GPs in your deal, where and have maybe a way to exit your capital eventually, like
Right.
not your capital, but all the
Yeah.
everybody else's money, and then you own a deal outright.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the goal.
It
And
takes a minute.
what's that?
It takes a minute to do it that way,
Yeah.
but it really is the way to really leverage your net worth, and it's the game worth playing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now that I'm in the real estate game, it is one is a fun game to be in. There's a lot of cool people that you meet. You and I met at an investor or a capital raising summit a couple weeks ago. So it's you never know who you're going to meet at these things. And haven't met really anybody that's like a bad egg, right? Where they're I've been in sales in my career, and salespeople love them or hate them. Some people are good, some people are bad, but
Yeah,
I haven't really met anybody that's like not supportive, or we're all competing, right? We're all competing against the same, there's only a finite number of 100+ unit deals on the market at any given time. And so one thing I've realized is the recruiting part of me is like, well, one person can't just do everything. So you need to recruit a team of people. And I'm good at helping people find people, right? If you're trying to build a team, you tell me what you need, I can help you go find it. So that's been really, really interesting. And I've actually been helping a couple of the folks that I know in the real estate game. They're trying to build their real estate team, their own team. So I've been actually recruiting for them, helping them find marketing people and whatever. I really didn't think that was going to be a value add that I would have, that they need to hire a marketing manager, and I'm kind of helping them find that. So that's been a cool accidental positive.
well, I also say too, the difference between single family and multifamily. Multifamily is really about all me, me, me. So it gets a little bit more angst. Where in the multifamily space, it already is mostly perceived that it's team. It's
Yeah.
not I, it's we. And I think it's not only that, is the expectations of profits are way slower and a longer period of time. It's like, let's slow down. We're building wealth and we're patient with it, but that's exactly where we're going, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference in the mentality. That's why I love the multifamily space. Is the people that are in it are thinking, we're not playing checkers and trying to just jump over something.
Right.
We're looking 3 or 4 moves and say, let's play chess. Let's take the whole board, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is, I love that part of the multifamily side.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of people that I've met and became friends with that I would never have met if I would have gone and stayed at the 2 to 4 units, because you don't need a team for 2 to 4 units. You just need more capital, or creative financing to get these deals done. So yeah, that's been a really big positive, especially moving from Philadelphia to Austin. There's people that I've met here that, I hang out with now and grab beers with or whatever. And, we're all trying to build that wealth, whether we have kids and we're trying to build generational wealth, or we've got passion projects and we're trying to fund those. Like, there's just so many things you can do with real estate that I didn't realize 4 years ago.
When you were initially reaching out to those people with your money, your first deal, what did you do? What kind of communication? How did you let people know that I've got a deal, and how did that kind of shape its way?
Yeah. So all the deals that I've done are 506B. So I couldn't advertise, right? I couldn't just blast on LinkedIn or buy a billboard and say, I've got this deal. So, and I kind of, once I started to wrap my brain around raising capital, I didn't want to do it how some people do it, where they have this massive 10,000 person list that they don't know who they are. And they just blast emails and hope, 1% of those people click and wire money. So, and also I was very nervous about reaching out to people, because my brand up until this point has been, Justin is a good recruiter. He's the recruiting guy. So I had to start to shape people's perception of what I did and what I was good at and what I knew about real estate. Because, if I called a couple of my friends and been like, hey, do you want to invest 50 grand in real estate? It's like, what do you know about real estate? Right. And so I had to explain to people what my journey was. I had explained to people that I've already invested in these deals. I explained to them that I invested a lot of money in the educational program that comes along with being in one of these syndication groups. And then I had to walk them through kind of my journey of underwriting and raising money, and that I was putting my own capital into it. But once it wasn't as hard as I thought to get that first, oh, that makes sense. Because I think a lot of people think about real estate as an investment, whether they think about multifamily or single family, but they just don't either have the time or they don't know what to do, right? And there's a lot of people that I talk to that I used to work with that I would say, yeah, I'm doing in real estate investing. Like, oh yeah, I've got a second house that I bought a few years ago that I just rent out to friends or whatever. And so that's where a lot of people's brains stop when it comes to real estate investing. They don't think about, well, no, I can invest money into a 150 unit apartment complex across the country, and I don't do anything other than collect checks.
Right.
So my initial process was looking through my phone and my LinkedIn connections and saying, I'm going to reach out to these few people via email and say, hey, here's what I'm doing. Have you ever thought about real estate before? And my whole pitch was not a sales pitch. It was here's what I'm doing. Here's the opportunity. And if you have interest in learning more, let's jump on a call. Let's jump on a Zoom. Let's go have coffee. Because I never want to sell somebody on a deal.
Right.
I don't want people to come away being like, oh, he sold me on that. I want them to be like, yep, I have some money. I really know, I understand enough about real estate and what the power of real estate is. And I want to put my money in a deal that you brought me versus another opportunity that they could invest with. So it was more of a one-to-one versus a one-to-many. Just because you know this well better than most, is it's all about your brand, right? Even if you have a bad deal that doesn't go as well as you thought, as long as you're communicative and the investor knows that everything was done that possibly could have been done, and here are the reasons why, and they were updated, they're more likely to reinvest with you in another deal than if you just ghost them and don't give them really any details or anything like that. So I've tried to take a more personal approach to my investors, and being there to communicate what's going on, what's the positives and negatives, other than just what the monthly email update says with a rent roll and a T12.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. So when we look to the future, 2023, what's your plan there? What do you see, and how are you guys trying to set yourself up to win?
So I think 2023 is going to be the year of the operator. Frankly, I think the last few years the market has bailed out a lot of crappy deals that people bought, maybe overpaid for, but the appreciation, the values have gone up, rents have gone up higher than they probably anticipated, and so they won, which is great. And so I think people that bought deals in the last few years, especially with variable rate debt, probably didn't underwrite that they were going to refinance or potentially try to refinance into fixed debt at a 6 or 7% rate, right? They probably were at 5.5, something like that. So I think there's going to be deals that are going to come out that the sellers need to sell because they can't refinance, or they can't refinance at a rate that makes sense. So there's going to be some distressed sellers potentially. I'm still a buyer in this market. I think there's opportunities in all markets. I think it's just going to be slower or fewer deal flow than the last 2 years. But I think a lot of the people that are actually selling, I'll take that back. You probably will have two types of deals on the market. People that are fishing for an offer that are like, I'll take it if I get the right number. Or people that just need to sell because there's no other option. No lender will lend them any more money or whatever. Their investors are like, I need to get my money back. So I definitely think there's going to be opportunities. Some of the folks that I know, like, and trust in my group that are more acquisition heavy are also kind of in the more let's operate our deals that we have now phase, so that we can make sure that the business plans on those are moving forward, so that we're able to hit our goals and hit our distributions and all of that. So I think there's going to be deals. I think there's going to be fewer, and you're going to have to sift through some junk. But I'm definitely still a buyer. I think what I'm going to be focused on, because my investors are telling me this in more than one way, I'm going to be looking more at kind of primary markets versus, central Arkansas or whatever, some secondary, tertiary market that they don't know about that we might know that it's a good market, but you still have to raise the money to fund those deals, right? That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So I live in Austin. I would love to find a deal in Austin. It's still very difficult to find deals here. Very, very competitive as Phoenix and Scottsdale are. So I'm definitely keeping my eyes open for operators in more primary markets than secondary. I've got a bunch of deals in Jacksonville, Florida. I still like that market, but Florida's a little bit unique just with all the hurricanes they've had in the last couple of months. So and insurance rates have gone through the roof there, and even in Texas as well. So yeah, it's just a matter of finding the right one. And I think that the most overused word in multifamily real estate is conservative. But trying to find a deal that you can still be conservative on and it still works and you're still able to win it, I think those will be the ones that I'll look for.
Amen. Amen with that. Well, listen. So, is there any books you've been reading lately besides Rich Dad that really has kind of pushed you to like, wow, that was a really good read?
I think the one book that I haven't read it recently. Well, I've read it recently, but it's been one that I read almost every year is called Vivid Vision. It's not really a real estate book necessarily, but it's more of a business mindset book. So it's all about setting goals, but setting them and writing them down as if they're happening or they've happened. So you kind of write like a 3-year vision of what does your life look like in 3 years, and it can be across a specific goal like multifamily real estate. My wife and I do one every year, and we're actually going away to Texas wine country in Fredericksburg this weekend, and we're going to do our 2023 goals. And so we've kind of gone through that process, and we'll talk about our real estate goals, our investing goals, my business goals. My wife is still a W-2. She still has a W-2 job, but she's also starting a coaching practice on the side. So we'll talk about that, relationship goals, personal goals, all that stuff. So
right on.
So it helps us to really align because, being an entrepreneur, I know you and your wife do a lot of work together. We do some of the stuff in real estate together. I'm more active in that just because she's got a job and all of that. But we try to make sure we're aligned so that, we know what everybody's doing, and we're in lockstep, and we've been so over the last few years, which has helped us kind of get to where we are. And now it's just a matter of continuing to grow and stack more assets, more cash flowing assets on top of one another.
That is the goal, my friend, is to keep stacking the cash, dude.
Exactly.
Put them all together one by one by one, and all of a sudden you look at it, you're like, wow, look at what we've achieved, what we've got. I mean, it really does make a big difference when you set it up properly, as you are building it slow and steady.
Yep.
That really is the key. So, any advice you'd love to give to any of the new listeners, or maybe even somewhat seasoned investors that are out there listening to this podcast today?
I think underwriting, or knowing how to underwrite, or knowing how to look at underwriting, is a skill that a lot of people have. But even if you're I'm a capital raiser, or I raise capital, if that's your like shtick, I've talked to a few people that they've never underwritten a deal, or they don't really know what the underwriting note looks like. Everybody has a different underwriting tool, and so it can be a bit complicated to kind of know what your tool is like with my tool and all that fun stuff. But having the basic underwriting skills to look at an underwriting and an analysis and saying, I think this deal is risky, or I think they've been conservative enough for me to put my capital and my investors' capital at risk. Because that's what you're doing. You're investing that money, and it is at risk of something happening. So I think just spending the time, and it doesn't have to be the full year like I did. You don't have to underwrite 200 deals. You can sit down with an experienced underwriter and say, walk me through what you would do on this deal, just so that I can have an understanding of how to look at the T12, how to look at a rent roll, and then plug it into a deal analysis tool. And then what does it actually do, right?
Right. What does it mean? What does it do? Yeah.
Yeah. Because, you and I both know you can make any deal on an Excel doc look amazing by changing the cap rate, changing, the interest rates, changing whatever. And that's what I look for. And that's why I like the group that I'm in. And I've only raised money on the syndication group that I'm in so far. I will raise for other operators probably in 2023. and that's one thing that I'm focused on now, is trying to find good operators that I trust. I'll probably invest with them and then, probably raise after that investment. But that was a long-winded answer saying, I think just having some basic underwriting experience is good, so that you can feel comfortable going to your investors and saying, I've done at least my level of due diligence, that I feel comfortable in putting my money into this deal. And then, maybe they'll follow suit as well.
It does mean a lot. It goes a long way. So, Justin, how do people get a hold of you?
LinkedIn's the best. I mean, I'm always on LinkedIn from a recruiting standpoint. That's probably the best way to find me. But my real estate website is greatventurecapital.com. And then my email is just justin@greatventurecapital.com. Those are probably the best ways to find me. And if you're ever in Austin, let me know and we'll hang out.
Awesome. Well, listen, I love Justin's exit there, talking about really doing the work in the underwriting. Listen, it's not one deal, it's not 5 deals. It is really 100 deals. You've got to get that level of expertise to become a master. You can't just, try 100 different leg kicks on one spot. You've got to do one leg kick 100 times in the same spot to get really ninja at it. That is, how you become a master. And from there, you can teach others to do the same, and you can tweak it and make it your own. But it really is doing the work. Most people in this where we're going to 2023, it's going to be those who have done the work, that understand the consistency that it's needed. And the word conservative is overused, but understanding that you've got to be conservative in your underwriting, and that you can't just hope and pray things go well, right? It is the year of the operator. It is a great time to be looking to the multifamily space, guys. And for all those who have not yet, our KAHUNA Boardroom is still open. So KAHUNABoardroom.com, that's our 3-day training to go through how to raise money, how to find deals, how to operate, all the little things that we do. It's a 3-day intensive, super great class. Go to KAHUNABoardroom.com to check it out. And by the way, if you come, we'll actually give you a couple free copies of our book. So you definitely want to show up for that as well. But Justin, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Guys, this all starts with your mindset. Nothing happens that's good unless a thought occurs. Raw dirt doesn't get developed because it happens by itself. Someone had to envision that dirt and see something way better. In your mind, if you want to be successful in 2023, you got to perceive it and believe it that it's going to be much better. Guys, if you believe it, you can achieve it, and your paradise is possible.